And you are live.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our annual State of the City Forum. Mike Skelton with the Greater Manchester Chamber. I want to welcome you all. It's great to have a big crowd joining us this morning virtually. This is always a great discussion and point for our community to come together and talk about some important issues. So really glad you're able to join us. So before we dive into our program, just have a few introductions and opening remarks. I want to welcome all of our chamber board members who are joining us this morning virtually. As I talk about at all of our events, our chamber board is so important to our organization and ensuring that we are on track, accomplishing our mission. I just want to quickly introduce them all and would encourage you to, if you ever have any questions about the chamber, feel free to reach out to them. They're great resources and advocates for our organization. So our board members joining us this morning are Nathan Saller, who's the chairman of the board from Bellwether Community Credit Union, Anna Thomas from Manchester Public Health, Bill Brewster from Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, Diane Fitzpatrick from the Boys and Girls Club of Manchester, Ernesto Burden from McLean Communications, Janelle McDonald from Stibler Associates, who's also our vice chair of the board, Dr. John Goldhart from the Manchester School District, Chris McCracken from Amoskeag Health, Matt Cookson from Cookson Communications, Mike DeSalle from University of New Hampshire, Manchester, Ovid LaMontagne from Bernstein Schur, Patrick Tufts from Granite United Way, Paul Mailhot from Army and Biofab USA, Preston Hunter from Ekman Construction, Ted Kitchens from Manchester Boston Regional Airport, and Trini Houghton from Sojourn Partners. So thank you again to all of our board members for joining us. Awesome turnout. I'd also like to take a moment to recognize our sponsors who make events like this possible, really allow the chamber to accomplish our mission and move forward on so many important initiatives, in addition to bringing events like this, making events like this possible. So our presenting sponsor today is Bellwether Community Credit Union. Our corporate sponsor is BAE Systems, and our advocate sponsor is the Lansing Melbourne Group. So thank you all to our sponsors. I'd like to welcome and introduce Nathan Saller, who's the CEO and president of Bellwether Community Credit Union, to say a few words as our presenting sponsor. Nathan was named CEO in January 2017, and executive VP in May of 2018. Has been a great partner and advocate for the chamber for many years, and we're really fortunate and honored to have him as our chairman of the chamber board for this year. So Nathan, thanks so much for your support, and would love to have you welcome us in today.
Sure. Thanks so much, Mike. Good morning, everyone. I'd just like to welcome you. Thank you for participating and taking some time out of your busy schedules to join us for this conversation. On behalf of our members and our entire team here at Bellwether, we're proud to sponsor today's State of the City event. Bellwether Community Credit Union was established back in 1921 when a small group of individuals pooled their money in an effort to access affordable financial services. In a couple months, in June, Bellwether will celebrate 100 years of helping members buy a home, save for the future, or grow their business. And back in 1921, the people in New Hampshire were still recovering from a worldwide flu pandemic. Today, the challenges we've faced personally and as a community are still fresh, but we have much to be hopeful about as we look to the future. Mayor Craig, I'd like to sincerely thank you for joining us today for a conversation on the state of our city. And I'd also like to thank the incredible chamber team for putting together this program today and for everything that they do to support the business community. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Nathan. Nathan, we really appreciate your support and looking forward to a great program today. All right, before I turn it over to the mayor and start today's conversation, just a few quick reminders and housekeeping items on our format. We're going to really have more of a free-flowing conversation today and want to welcome and encourage everyone to ask questions. There is actually a Ask a Question button down the bottom. And if you click on that, you can post a question. You can also upvote for other questions that have been submitted to make sure that they get our attention and on our radar. We're going to try and ask as many questions, get to as many questions that we can. There is also a polls feature that we're using this morning. We've asked a couple of poll questions. We'd love to have you participate in those. This event will be available afterwards via replay link and also on the Chamber's YouTube channel. So encourage you to share this with colleagues and friends. It's always a great resource, and we appreciate everyone's engagement. So I'm going to take a moment and just introduce the mayor and then kick it off with kind of an opening question. So of course, we all know Mayor Craig and appreciate her joining us, but she was born and raised here in Manchester and grew up in Ward 8, a graduate of Manchester Public Schools, earned a degree in business administration from the University of New Hampshire and worked in the marketing industry for 15 years. She started in public service in 2007 when serving on the Board of School Committee. And then in 2009, won a seat on the Board of Mayor of Aldermen representing Ward 1, where she served for 3 terms. In 2017, Mayor Craig was elected as Manchester's 48th mayor, and she was the first woman elected to that office in the city's history. And she's now serving in her 2nd term, having been reelected this past fall. Mayor Craig and her husband, Michael, have 3 children, William, Sarah, and Catherine. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mayor Craig. Thank you, Mayor, for joining us this morning. And I think to kick it off, there is no more appropriate question than having you share with us your general thoughts and key topics on what's the state of the city.
Well, thank you, Mike. It's such a pleasure to be here with all of you. And I'd just like to start off by thanking Mike and the team at the Chamber for hosting this event. And while it looks a little different than it has in past years, it's just so great to be here with all of you. I'd also like to thank the sponsors, Bellwether Credit Union, BAE Systems, and Lansing Melbourne Group. We appreciate all of your support to the Chamber as well as to our city. And I also want to thank all of you who are tuning in today. I know that you've all played an active part in helping us in the community, not only through this pandemic, but through your years living here or working here. And I just want you to know how much we appreciate that. And in thinking back about last year's State of the City, I was reminded that that was probably one of the last in-person large events that I, and probably many of you, attended. And before we knew it, the COVID pandemic was upon us. And since that time, it's really upended the lives of individuals in our city, in our state, and throughout our country. But in true Manchester fashion, we didn't shy away from the unprecedented challenges. Instead, we rose to those challenges. We developed guidelines, addressed questions and concerns, and made difficult and sometimes not so popular decisions, always with the health and safety of our community first and foremost. And despite all of the unknowns, the changing guidance and concerns, we went to work every single day making decisions to keep our residents safe. And through it all, our community stepped up. We had residents raising money for frontline workers. Nonprofits worked to ensure that our students had meals, and friends organized neighborhood cleanups. Our city was there for each other like they've been in the past. And while this was a tremendously difficult year, I am cautiously optimistic. Spring is here, it's getting warmer, vaccines are becoming more readily available, and for the first time, Manchester will receive approximately $44 million over the next 2 years as a result of the American Rescue Plan, which will help our city recover from the devastating effects of COVID-19. So amid all of this, our city is moving forward and crafting solutions to the challenges that we face. I'm grateful for the perseverance of our Manchester community and what they've shown over the last year. And I know that brighter days are ahead. Manchester is strong and we're tough. And throughout our history, we faced immense challenges. And this is no different. So I believe in our community, in our residents, in our businesses, and by working together like we've always done in the past, I know that we'll continue to build a strong foundation for our city.
Thank you, Mayor. That's a great kickoff to our conversation. And I think it would be good to start with talking a little bit more about the city's response to the pandemic. You are right, and it is remarkable to think about that. It was a little more than a year ago that we were hosting the Chamber's State of the City, and we at the Institute of Politics, and at that time, we were focusing on elbow bumping and washing of hands, and COVID was new to all of our vocabulary, and we really didn't know what was ahead. I think, reflecting upon, the past year, what was, what has that experience been like as mayor? What do you see as kind of the major challenges that you believe the city's been able to overcome in terms of the day-to-day management of this issue? And, obviously you're one city as part of an overall state, which is part of an overall country. And that's been one of the challenges here, is that coordinating across different levels of government. And so just looking back, the city's response to COVID-19 and your thoughts on how we've been able to move forward and work through this issue.
Yeah, the thing that comes first to mind is that I'm tremendously grateful for the commitment and dedication of our city leadership, our directors, and both on the city side and the school district, as well as our city and school district employees. This was an extremely difficult time. Changes happened almost immediately, and they reacted. And I think it's also important to note that the city was well prepared for this. We had emergency plans in order that had been tested. We had made hires, an epidemiologist, for example, an emergency management coordinator. Those had happened prior to COVID. So once this pandemic hit, we were really ready to hit the ground running. And we had to make those very difficult decisions really quick. So, I remember being together at the Emergency Operations Center with a number of department heads and city leadership, and we had to decide to close schools when we knew that our students and staff were at risk. The next, I think, day or two later, the state ended up closing schools. But we closed schools, and then 3 days later, we also had a process in place to ensure meals were getting to students. So it's like we made these decisions, and then immediately following, we had action plans to ensure that we were proceeding and with the utmost caution. We set up programs for recovery for our community, some of which we worked with the chamber on. So, we had the Small Business Recovery Loan Program. We worked with MDC on that with $1 million in place, a low interest loan that small businesses could take out, and still there's money available for businesses affected by COVID. The Small Business Resiliency Grant Program, which was a fantastic grant program, providing $5,000 to small businesses throughout the community, and for them to keep employees in place and grow their businesses at a time that it was significantly challenged. I believe that we put over $260,000 toward that. And then we also put forward a program for emergency housing assistance for renters or homeowners who had issue with paying their mortgage or paying their rent. So just addressing both our residents and our business community the best that we possibly could. And then also doing our best to build community events when we knew we couldn't get together. So we expanded outdoor dining when we knew that individuals were not comfortable going inside. So again, providing that sense of community and also supporting our small businesses. We implemented a Takeout Tuesday, encouraging everyone in the community to sort of, patronize your favorite restaurant and get takeout on Tuesday. And, we held the first ever holiday light contest. Again, families could go out in their car, drive around the city, look at lights, and vote on their top choice. When I talk to businesses and when I talk to residents, and when we talk about the effects of COVID, it's that isolation and our sense of missing each other. It's what I miss the most in my job. And so what we've really tried to do is build a sense of community, although most of it's virtual, but try to make sure that we're doing outreach and working with our community to address the needs as best we can.
And looking ahead, we're at a period where I think there's a lot of cautious optimism that, we're turning the corner or entering a different phase of the pandemic as vaccines are distributed and we enter the outdoor season. So just based on your conversations with public health officials, with officials around the state, your fellow mayors, How are you feeling about the trajectory of the pandemic in Manchester, and what lies ahead?
Like I said, I'm cautiously optimistic. We are, as many communities are, seeing a bit of an increase in positive cases. And I think, for sure there's COVID fatigue. We've all had it. I've had it. I want it to be done. But at the same time, we have to be vigilant. We have to continue wearing masks. We have to continue to make sure that we're staying a safe distance away from individuals. And we are all missing each other. But in order to get back to a sense of normalcy, we need to be cautious now. More people are becoming vaccinated, which is fantastic news. My 16-year-old got her first vaccination this week. We're about to get our second, my husband and I, in a couple weeks. And I know many are on that path, and it's great news. But again, until there's herd immunity, I think that we really need to be cautiously optimistic and vigilant in ensuring the safety of our community.
I wanted to ask about schools, but before I do that, a quick reminder to the audience to drop those questions in the chat. Use the Ask a Question feature. We're going to get to those as soon as we can after we kind of tick through some of these key topics. So just want to remind everybody to make use of that. You alluded to this in your comments that for the state's largest school district, managing COVID-19 and the decisions that had to be made along the way were significant. And as chair of the school board, obviously, in addition to your role as mayor, you're actively engaged in that space. So I'm wondering if you could just reflect on how this has impacted the schools and the work that they've been able to do to adapt and reopen at certain instances, and kind of where things are looking going forward.
Yeah, certainly there's been a tremendous impact on education, not only in the city of Manchester, but throughout our entire country. And I feel like that's something that's important to say, because I feel like sometimes the spotlight is on Manchester and what we're doing. But there are many other communities in our state and throughout our country who are dealing with this same exact thing. The last thing any of us want to do is take our students out of the classroom. And I say that as the mayor, as a chairman of the school board, and as a mother of a daughter who is a junior at Central High School. But we did have to make that difficult decision in conjunction with the health department to ensure the safety of our students and our staff in our schools. We have over 13,000 students in our schools with thousands of staff, and we needed to take time to make sure that our buildings were safe from an air ventilation perspective and cleaning perspective. And we needed to social distance everybody for 6 feet. And then we mandated masks. So we put a lot of rules and guidelines in place that needed to be followed. And with those, we were remote for a number of weeks. And then we went into, we were fully remote. And then we went into a hybrid model where students were able to go in 2 days a week, where we still are now. And then on the Monday after school vacation, May 3rd, our students would be going back to school 5 days a week. Now, through all of this, our community and our business partners really stepped up. And I would be remiss if I did not mention the tremendous efforts of Manchester Proud. It was difficult to make sure that we were reaching every student who had been coming to our schools. And one of the things that Manchester Proud helped with in a great manner is helping us with getting more laptops and computer devices. And so now, it's this pandemic, which was terrible. But as a result, we have a one-to-one electronic device with student, so that's a good thing that's come of it. We have continued to focus on and moving forward important initiatives on the school side, again, with the efforts of Manchester Proud, hiring a chief equity officer, developing the school equity dashboard, and then moving forward with our community partnerships. So all of those things are to ensure that there's equity, transparency, and efficiencies in the school district, which, we want to do everything we can. And we know that everyone in our community benefits from having exceptional public schools. And we want to make sure that we're providing everything we can, including supports now more than ever, to our public school students, because we know that it's been a very difficult year learning online. And so in addition to that, we've also invested in curriculum, which hadn't happened in a number of years. So we've got a new math curriculum, we've got a new reading curriculum, we've provided significant professional development to our teachers. So on Wednesdays for the schools, that was what I'll call a catch-up day. So if students needed extra help from teachers, the teachers were available to do so. But we were also able to provide professional development to our teachers on those days. So it was really a great opportunity for them to learn and to share experiences with each other. And, we've been able to expand the aviation program at MST, and again, partnerships with SNU in helping us to train our workforce for diversity and equity. And so through it all, as difficult as it was, I really feel like in the end, again, there'll be silver linings and we'll learn from these experiences. And, when I talk to students, so we've been out with the Bookmobile at the Boys and Girls Club, for example, or at other places, and I've had an opportunity to talk to students, and they're really looking forward to getting back to school. And I think that if this were sort of a typical school year with no pandemic, we wouldn't have that enthusiasm from our students, and they miss their friends, they miss their teachers, and with everything that's in place that we've done, and with the significant summer school programming that's available to every student in our district, I really feel like we're setting the kids up for success when they come back.
You mentioned silver linings, and I think that's something I wanted to ask about, because as challenging and difficult as this experience has been, there have been some things that have trends or new ideas that have bubbled up that have made a real positive impact and hopefully have some long-term value to them. One of which that I think is of great interest to the chamber and the business community was, you mentioned outdoor dining, and how that was really born out of necessity last year. And folks may not realize that I think the city did some great work to streamline and open up the process and give more flexibility for restaurants and businesses to make use of that outdoor space. And that's been brought back again this year. And I believe there's actually more businesses participating, not just downtown, but really anywhere within the city. And, I know the planning department is talking about long-term kind of really adding this to the city's toolbox and as an option, and looking actually for ways to add some permanency to it. So Elm Street could really make use of more outdoor placemaking initiatives to attract people and promote, visitors and great business and welcoming environment to our downtown.
Yeah, I mean, again, we've heard great feedback from the businesses as well as residents and visitors in the community to the opportunity to eat outside. Their jersey barriers and the artwork that are on the jersey barriers, the folks that did that have done fantastic work. I love and encourage more public art in our community. We've done research into what other communities are doing, and some have implemented what are called parklets. So like you said, semi-permanent areas, little parklets that you could put in a parking space or two that encourage, again, a sense of community. And they could be not only in the downtown, but in neighborhoods, again, to encourage people to get together, to share stories, do what we all want to do. It takes money. So we have these ideas, we've put them forward to the board, and it's a potential that some of these relief funds could fund some of those. We're still waiting for guidelines. If they could, I would love to be able to do that throughout the city, because again, we're all looking for things like that. We've seen that, we know that Manchester residents and visitors to our city love being outside. They love being in our parks. We've done an awful lot of work to our parks, and through the pandemic, even more so with the trails and opportunities to be outside. So as much as we can do to encourage and expand those opportunities, we're doing that.
You mentioned the relief funds that have come into the city, and I think it'd be good to just check in and chat about that, get your thoughts on that. So it's just so all of our members are aware, it's $44 million. It comes in 2 different installments. And I know, as you mentioned, we're still waiting for the kind of the fine print from the federal government on how these funds can be used, what things they can be used for. But could you share a little bit about, you've invited members of the community to submit ideas, how they can do that, and your general thoughts on how to approach this in terms of leveraging it for real value for the city going forward?
Yeah, so this is the first time that Manchester will be receiving direct funds from the federal government. Like you said, it's around $44 million. The state's also receiving funding, as well as the counties. So we did put it out to the public to get their thoughts and ideas on how they would like to see these monies spent. And there's still an opportunity to provide feedback. And what you can do is go to our website, which is manchesternh.gov. And fill out the information there, and I'd really encourage you to do so. So to date, we've received 133 responses, and the recommendations have varied, but 41% of the responses have focused on transportation, infrastructure, and recreation, so roads, sidewalks, trails, and parks. 38% of the responses have focused on affordable housing and homelessness. 15% focused on education. And I guess what's important to note is the school district is receiving their own federal funds. So right now they've got $26 million, and then they're getting an additional, I believe, $41 million. So the 44 that are coming directly to the city will be spent on city projects. 14% of the responses are focused on businesses and downtown events, 11% finances, lowering taxes, direct assistance, and then 8% about public health. And so, you know, it's varied greatly, but it's consistent with sort of the way that I've been thinking about utilizing these funds. And from a process perspective, once we get the guidelines, we'll be reviewing those guidelines, obviously, and we're hearing that $22 million will be coming in this fiscal year. $22 million will be coming in next fiscal year. And so my office will be putting together recommendations and then running those by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for approval. So, you know, some of the things that we need to use these funds are making up for lost revenues that we factually know that there was a decrease in revenues from parking, from building permits, and from interest income. So we may need to utilize these funds to do that. And then fitting up our buildings again to ensure that they are safe, like all of the school buildings, with proper air ventilation and filtration systems. And then it is focusing on a lot on the parks and outdoor space. There's been increased use in those, and we want to encourage increased use in those. Some thoughts that I've had are we have an affordable housing trust fund in the city of Manchester. It's got about $200,000 in it. These funds provide the first real opportunity that the city has had to really look at how we can increase affordable workforce housing in the city of Manchester. And we know that that is critically necessary. So putting a significant amount of money into a trust fund that would either incentivize private developer to include affordable housing in the development there, or to help our nonprofit partners in the city in building out what they're doing for affordable or supportive or workforce housing. We've also talked about putting together a funding opportunity for landlords so they could get a grant to update and rehab apartments that we know have fallen behind, as long as they would make a commitment for 20, 25 years to ensure that those apartments would be, affordable housing for the community. And then the obvious roads and sidewalks, we know that they need repair and want to utilize some funds for that. And then there are also some other, we have Hackett Hill, and and it's ready and prime for development, the right development, but there's not a great access way. So I think that it may be a good opportunity to look at investing a little money there for an access road to Hackett Hill, so that we can show it appropriately, because when that exit is done there, it will be a great opportunity for development for the city of Manchester. And then, as I mentioned earlier, I really feel that arts bring an awful lot to a community. And if there's anything that we can do with these funds to encourage public art and our local talent to do more, I think that's a great thing. And then lastly, the conversation has come up, and I believe you just mentioned it, on Elm Street. And we hear consistently that people want to close Elm Street. And again, we have to see where we are from a safety perspective. But if there's a way to utilize these funds so that we could close Elm Street on a few weekends this summer, I think that would be a great thing for the businesses down here and again for the community. So there are a number of things that we can do, and the more ideas that we get from the public, the better. So I really encourage people to send their ideas in. Again, this is an unprecedented opportunity that we have in the city, and we want to make sure that we're using these dollars in a way that meets the needs of our city.
You touched on a couple of items that actually relate to audience questions, so I thought this would be a good time to chat about those. You just talked extensively about workforce housing and Manchester's kind of challenge and progress related to that, and I think outlined some good ideas how the ARP money might be able to address that. Recently, I know you've also you had a task force or a commission looking at that issue, and I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about what that group found in terms of findings or recommendations, and how you see that as influencing kind of future action steps that we might be able to take.
Yeah, sure. So we put together the Mayor's Affordable Housing Task Force. It included, representatives from nonprofits, from housing development, private developers, city staff, and elected officials. And they really had a robust conversation and discussion about how we can make modifications to incentivize and encourage affordable housing development in the city of Manchester. So we've seen significant increase in the cost of apartments throughout our state, but especially in the city of Manchester. So there's been a 25% increase in cost over the last decade in the city of Manchester for a 2-bedroom apartment. And just in the last year, it's increased 10%. So at the same time, we're seeing a significant increase in cost for an apartment, we have a 1% vacancy rate. So it's really, it's a significant challenge that needs to be addressed. And these ARP funds should really be able to make a difference here. So with this report, a few things came out of it. One is that we're recommending a housing commission. Again, that has to be approved by the board, but we're in the process of putting together the recommendation for that. So what this commission will do will stay on top of the recommendations and make sure that they're going through the process and stay focused on this, because we have to stay focused on this and make sure that we make some changes to encourage, again, housing opportunities in the city of Manchester. A few of the top line items that came out of it is utilizing city property. We have an opportunity right now, and I have a couple RFPs going through the city departments from a process perspective, looking at, for example, Hartnett Lot and Pearl Street parking lot. To me, they're two underutilized properties. They're literally just parking lots. And I'm not saying to do away with parking. I know we need parking. Hopefully, we're going to need more parking, but it doesn't mean that we can't build up. And so, putting out an RFP to developers on a mixed use for that space, and then specifically stating that X% of the living units have to be affordable. So we're in a great position right now to be able to do that. From a planning and zoning regulation perspective, some changes that they suggested were density bonuses, parking minimums, or expanding uses in mixed zoning districts. The mayors and I are also working with the New Hampshire Municipal Association to amend the state building code so that municipalities can allow tiny houses under 400 square feet. Right now, we can't. And many of us want to do that. In working with the Planning and Development department here in the city of Manchester, we've identified some potential lots that could accommodate these tiny homes, and we need the state building codes changed in order to move forward with something like that. We are recommending a housing resource portal, so that would provide information to renters, landlords, and homeowners experiencing and those experiencing homelessness, where they can access specific information and resources all in one place. Because right now it's sort of there are different nonprofits that are helping individuals, but again, feedback that we've received, we need to make this easy for people. We want to make sure that, and I view this sort of as a prevention tool to homelessness. If we can identify someone that's at risk early on and make sure that we're providing them with the resources and help that they need sooner rather than later, then that's ultimately what we want to do. So those are a few of the highlights that came out of that.
Great. A topic that you just touched on that also I wanted to ask about is homelessness, and a question came in from the audience around that issue, and specifically its impact on Elm Street and the idea of folks feeling welcome and safe on Elm Street. I know this is an issue you've talked about at several chamber meetings in the past, and it's also been a very complex issue during COVID in terms of emergency shelter space. So maybe you could share a little bit on how the city has grappled with that issue during COVID, because the nature of it changed significantly, and then efforts going forward in terms of addressing it. I know we have a new position starting soon, or has already started, that is exciting and potentially will help coordinate a lot of efforts. Yeah,
thank you. So there has been an awful lot of work done in addressing homelessness in the city of Manchester. And again, this is one of those things where in working with mayors from across the state, this was the number one issue that every single mayor in the state of New Hampshire is grappling with. And one of the things that we did collectively was we sent a letter to the governor, because the last statewide plan that's been done to address homelessness in the state was done in 2006. And so as a result of our outreach, the governor has put forward a Housing Stability Commission. Their report is coming out at the beginning of June. So we really look forward to working with the state and in addressing this issue. It's hitting our local communities, but it's imperative that we have a statewide plan that works with the local communities to address this. So when the pandemic hit, we saw a mass exodus from our shelters, and it makes sense because they were, people that were there were nervous, being in close proximity to others, and the shelter had to decompress. So they went from about 180 beds to like 68 beds to ensure that those who were there were safe. So we followed CDC guidelines and worked with the state and supported some of the encampments throughout the city of Manchester with bathrooms, with hand washing stations, and with food. And when we did that, we were very upfront with the individuals living there, saying that this is a temporary situation, and we gave them a date certain when the services were going to end and go back to the shelter. And so again, I'm grateful for the support that the state provided and what we were able to do. And those services were provided again to ensure the safety of our community overall. So we did our best to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. And so, since then, we've seen an increase in encampments in the city of Manchester. Our shelter has more beds now, 116 beds, but still, a lower number than what they had in the past. During the winter, we opened up a temporary winter shelter. It was a fatality prevention effort, again, from December through the end of March, with Families in Transition New Horizons, doing everything we could to get people into the shelter. And it's important to note that with all of the outreach efforts that our nonprofits and city have been doing into the encampments, and those nonprofit partners include Manchester Mental Health, Families in Transition, Healthcare for the Homeless, our fire department, our health department, our welfare department, significant outreach and case management while people are living outside, trying to get them back into the shelter where they can get the services they need and the help they need to find stability in housing. And so not everyone has taken us up on the offer, and there are beds still available in the shelter, but we still have people living outside. And so, what we know from the conversations is that there are certain reasons that's happening, and there are certain modifications, again, that need to happen potentially so that we can help this vulnerable population. So right now, the shelter does not have space for couples, for example. It's a low barrier shelter. They don't have a specific area for sober individuals. So those are some of the things that we're talking with the shelter about, and that the shelter is considering doing. That takes funding again. There's the greenhouse is on the space of the shelter. It's an amazing opportunity there, but I think collectively we believe that that's some prime space that could be used. So thinking about, moving that greenhouse to another location within the city, so it's still operational, but would allow some expansion opportunity for the building, but also green space for individuals who are waiting. So they're not waiting in the street or the sidewalk. And then again, looking at the affordable housing opportunities in the city. So it's prevention, it's shelter, and it's increasing the affordable, supportive housing opportunities in the city. Our nonprofits have some projects in process already. So Families in Transition is working on developing 11 units at the former Angie's Place on Union Street. 1269 Cafe has city approval for, I believe, 23 individuals there. We've done outreach to other nonprofits to talk about opportunities throughout the city. So things are underway, and we have funds now to do things that we haven't had before. But this is truly a community effort. I wish I could say that, homelessness would go away. I think that realistically, there are going to be individuals who will always be living outside. This was a situation when I was a young girl living in Manchester. It'll probably be, an issue when my children are adults, hopefully living in Manchester. But I can tell you with full confidence that the city of Manchester, along with the faith-based community and our nonprofit partners, have been working around the clock to ensure that we are doing everything in our power to address this issue, because we know it's a significant issue in the city. And just talking to the safety, as you mentioned, the police department has done a fantastic job with what they're doing. We've seen over the last 5 years, a decrease in crime in the city of Manchester. This week, if you've been downtown, you've noticed that the foot patrol is down here again, which is great to see. We have officers on horses. I've seen officers on bikes. We have the comfort dog now in the city of Manchester who makes special appearances. And they're doing an awful lot of community policing, working with businesses and residents in the city to gain trust. So they're working hard as well. And again, like one of the things you mentioned was Elm Street specifically, and I think probably panhandling, which is an extremely difficult thing, because panhandling is, from a legal perspective, is considered freedom of speech. But it doesn't mean that someone can be aggressive in Panhandle, can knock on your window in Panhandle, can come out into the street and ask you for money. Those are not legal activities. So that's why it's important to have the police officers, in the area. So if they see someone, they can do something about it. But I encourage people to say something when that happens, because we want to do everything we can to prevent that as best we can. But it's a very, very difficult situation. And one of the things that, we've done in conjunction with the chamber is the Take 5 effort, where we're educating our community, we're educating the business owners to give right? So instead of giving money or food to someone who asks you for it, give it to that nonprofit who you believe in, who's doing good work, because there are a lot of services in the city of Manchester. And what we do want is individuals who are in need to go to those entities and get the services they need and the help that they need, instead of allowing them to continue to live on the street, and not be in a better place. And so, we just encourage you to give right when asked. And so, but again, this is one of those situations where, we've done a lot of research and what's happening in other communities. There's more that we can do. And if anybody has any suggestions or ideas on how we can do this better, I would love to hear from you.
We have about 10 minutes or so left, so I want to try and get to a couple more questions. One, I think exciting opportunity always for the city is what's happening in our mill yard, and some of the new innovations that are happening. There was recently an announcement around that the board took around the vertiport. And so I was wondering if you could share a little bit about exactly what that is, and also perhaps comment kind of relatedly to other transportation initiatives that are exciting for Manchester. Amtrak included Manchester on its expansion map recently that's tied to the potential American or the infrastructure plan that's being discussed, and the efforts at the airport to continue to expand air service. So what's the story with the vertiport, and what could that mean?
So only Dean came in, right? I mean, it's a great opportunity. There are a number of grants that the city is going after and being proactive to sort of bring new energy and new opportunities to the city of Manchester. And that's one that DECA reached out to the city of Manchester to partner with them on. Mm-hmm. And so basically it's funding an airport, which would enable us to transport life-saving organs from the mill yard or from the airport to hospitals in Cambridge or Dartmouth in just 15 minutes. So it would be the first one in the country, and a really an incredible opportunity for the city of Manchester and our mill yard, and would bring in jobs and for sure other businesses. Some of the other grant opportunities that we're being proactive in going after include our office is partnering with Amoskeag Health, and we applied for a $1 million grant from Bloomberg with the goal of bringing universal kindergarten to the city of Manchester as a pilot program, which would be an amazing opportunity. We're partnering with Manchester Connects to apply for an AARP grant with the goal of revitalizing a strip of pavement right outside of the Carpenter Center, where we see a lot of people sort of sitting on uncomfortable benches or standing, and giving them an area to really enjoy right in the middle of the city. We're applying for a Bloomberg asphalt grant to create murals under the Amoskeag Bridge pillars. DPW has applied for a TAP grant with the New Hampshire Department of Transportation, recommending that Canal Street be converted to a complete street. And so it would reduce the number of lanes and provide on-street parking, as well as a long multi-use protected path for bikers, runners, walkers, which would be fantastic. And we're applying for the Build Grant again, which is now called the RAISE Grant, which would improve transportation and increase economic development options along the South Elm Street corridor. And so there's an awful lot in the works to really bring energy and new opportunity into the city of Manchester. And then, we were thrilled to see Manchester included on the Amtrak plan. We've had discussions with them. We're doing everything we can to work with them and ensure that that does happen, because we know that from the many studies that have been done, it would really increase economic development opportunities and bring jobs to the city of Manchester. From an airport perspective, I can't speak highly enough for Director Kitchens and his leadership and his team and all that they've done at the airport. Airports across our country have been hit significantly as a result of the pandemic. And the work that Director Kitchens did pre-pandemic in setting the airport up for success really allowed us to get through this pandemic in a good way, if that's possible. And when you look at sort of the number of people who are flying, back on April 9th of 2020, there were 84 people who passed through the airport. And April 9 of 2021, there were 1,291 people. So that's a 1,000% increase year over year, which is fantastic. But we still have a lot of work to do, right? Because, pre-pandemic, we're at a level of 2,500 people. Cargo, they've had, in 2020, they had a record year for cargo at the airport. And 2021 shows no signs of that changing. In January and February, there's already a 7% increase in cargo. So that's been fantastic. And then, looking at the future and positioning the airport for success, working closely. I know Chet has been working closely with you, Mike, and the chamber and other chambers throughout the state to develop the Air Service Support Enhancement Team, which is a community consortium to assist the airport in air service development initiatives. And I think that's a really great opportunity for our airport and for the city of Manchester.
So we have just a few minutes left, so I think it'd be a good time to switch to just a few kind of wrap up questions. And the first one, Mayor, of course, we're always in New Hampshire entering another election season. That's always on the horizon. We're the land of never-ending elections, and so this year it's city elections. And just curious if you have you made a decision about running for re-election, and kind of what's kind of going into that thought process, or when you plan to make a decision about that?
Yeah. As I've said to you and to the chamber and in these speeches before, this is the best job that I've ever had in my entire life. I have an opportunity to work with my community, not only the residents, but the businesses, where I was born, where I'm raising my family, and can proactively and actively work to make our community better. So, I anticipate making a decision over the next few weeks.
And kind of along those lines, I think a good question to wrap up with is, because this job is meaningful to you, and then also, having experience doing this job during a year that I'm imagining was fundamentally different than all the other years you've held the position. I'm wondering what you learned about the city that might have been different. And I'm guessing, and I know I've heard from you that you got to see a lot of leaders rise up and do things and take on additional work and tasks, and members of the community stepping up to care for one another. So just wondering if there's any memories or experiences from the past year in your role as mayor that, really stuck out to you as illustrating the kind of strength and resiliency of our community.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is Director Anna Thomas and the health department. They have consistently, what I would say, flown under the radar. They do tremendous work for the city of Manchester from a public health perspective, again, helping residents, helping businesses, but have always done their job and not really been recognized for all that they do. And with this pandemic, they took an immediate leadership role in ensuring that when we didn't have guidelines, there were guidelines in place, and ensuring the safety of our community, again, making very difficult decisions, but always with the health and safety of our community first and foremost, and not only from a city perspective, but also on a school district side. And so they literally have been working 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, with the contact tracing, with the testing, now with vaccinations. They've done some really amazing things to ensure that individuals in our community are comfortable getting vaccinated, holding vaccine sites at an elementary school in the center city on Thursday nights, and just hiring community representatives who speak multiple languages to get information out into our community. So for me, I just feel so fortunate that we have such a strong team across the city. But the health department here, the public health department, really stepped up in a huge way during this pandemic.
Well, that's a great spot to end on. And Mayor, thank you so much for your time this morning and all of your efforts, and on behalf of the city and in partnership with the business community. We greatly appreciate it. And hopefully next year we're back in person and able to share this event again as a community together. So thank you again for all of your work and for your time this morning. I want to close by also thanking our sponsors, Bellwether Community Credit Union. Thank you, Nathan Saller, and your team for your support. Also want to thank BAE Systems and Lansing Melbourne Group for their fantastic support of this event and for the Chamber. Thank you all for tuning in and joining as part of this conversation. And there's also a button right down below to register for next week's Economic Forecast Forum, where Brian Gottlob, an economist and director of the Economic and Labor Market Information Bureau for the state of New Hampshire, will be giving us a great presentation on economic forecast and what the rest of the year is going to look like. A lot of exciting trends to look at there, so encourage you to join us. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.